after then.
It's a woman's choice what she does with her body. Yeah.
But what about the body?
You as well. Thank you. This is a woman's choice right here.
What about the human?
That's a woman's choice.
Okay, bye. It's a woman's choice. It's a woman's body.
To do this to a child.
It's her choice what she does with her body.
To do that to a child? That's not a woman's body, man.
Period.
That's not a woman's body, man. That's a little girl who was murdered.
Okay, but they couldn't support it. That's why they didn't want to.
So it's okay to murder them because they can't support the child? So we should murder people in the womb because we can't support them?
Well, if they don't want to bring them into this horrible ass world to suffer.
They're in the world. They're inside the body of their mother.
Yeah, but they're not actually out in the world.
They're in the world in their mother's body. That's in the world.
Yeah, but they're just a living organism at that time.
Yeah, and they're a human being, and we shouldn't murder them.
I shouldn't murder you. You're a human being.
Right?
I identify as an Apache helicopter, but okay.
Well, the preborn identify as human beings, and they shouldn't be murdered. I mean, look at this.
I mean, but that poses like a normal crime scene. Just chalk it out.
How can you justify murdering a child?
It's a crime against this baby.
Yeah, but that's like an animated thing with some.
No, it's not.
It's a real human being.
This is a real image taking out. This is a real baby that was taken out of a trash can in an abortion clinic, and they took a picture of it to bring awareness to this baby's life. This baby had a life, and they took it from her.
And you can see the child's legs, arms, hands, feet, where the child's head was. The skull was crushed. The ribs.
Yeah, you can tell.
You can tell. It's a small child, but you can still tell. And that's how we treat children every day in this culture, thousands of times, every day.
I'm not saying I agree, but I'm not saying I'm disagreeing at the same time.
You're justifying it though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is how we treat people, innocent people in this culture.
But that's how our modern world is going to be coming to.
And just
well, yeah,
we can't.
That's our rebellion against God on display. Well, we can.
Do you agree with slavery back in the day when it was legal?
No.
So we shouldn't agree with something as as evil.
We all have a right to an opinion. I understand that.
It was your ancestors that.
So you're white, just like me. Back in the day, it would be your right to own a slave. Is that right?
No.
Is it right to whip and beat your slave?
I mean, at that point in time, yes, it was.
No. So
why do you say that?
Though? Is it right to hang black
It's just how the world goes.
My mom's black.
But
I don't have my opinion.
Everything happens for a reason.
So I'm not
God
being
let
racist.
this happen.
He did, but that doesn't mean that he condoned it.
Could own a slave.
But why would he make it if he didn't like it?
He allows us to do awful things. He allows us to make evil choices. We all have choices that we can make. Good or evil.
It's the road for everyone to go through.
He was in an
y'all
orphanage.
keep throwing him in our face, like.
Yeah.
Well, because you're saying it's okay to murder people, and you're asking us about foster care and adoption. He was adopted, and some of you, it's like his life means nothing to you. Honestly.
Oh no, I'd adopt a disabled person.
Well, I'm just saying that some have asked about, well, you know, what about foster or you know, have you adopted? And I'll bring him up, and they're like, who cares? So it's like,
He's a human.
So his life means nothing.
Yes.
You know what? He was tortured for 18 years in an orphanage. His parents didn't want them, so they threw him away. He probably would have had a job. He probably would have had so much more than he has now. But they dumped him down. They threw him away. He has ligature marks on the insides of his wrists where he was beaten and tied to a tree. And this is what they did to him in an orphanage. And that's why we tell people not to throw away their children, because there are so many people who would love to adopt these kids.
But if there's so many people that want to adopt kids, why are there still kids in foster homes getting raped and beaten and murdered?
Because there's wicked people in this world. And
there's always been wicked. There's been wicked people for
ages.
So many years.
But it doesn't mean that we can make wicked and sinful choices, and continue to perpetuate wickedness and sinfulness. So murdering a child in the womb is just as wicked as throwing your child away in an orphanage where they will be tortured for the rest of their life.
Okay,
so I mean, some people would say, well, we're going to murder them in the womb so that they don't have to live a horrible life in an orphanage. Well, I'd ask them, would you want to put a gun to his head right now and pull the trigger? Most people would say no. I'd ask him why. Is it because he's not inside the womb anymore?
That's why we're saying that your life was not any less valuable when you were a one-cell human being, when you were a sperm and an egg put together, as you are now. I wouldn't sit here and kill you, and I wouldn't sit there and kill a one-celled human being.
Whether they're inside the womb or outside the womb, they're still a human being.
Yep.
And this culture, I was telling them over there, this culture says that it's okay to murder Down syndrome children in the womb. Oh, from my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, over 90% of children in the womb diagnosed with Down syndrome are murdered.
There's only 7% of children who survive. There's only 7% of these sweet, innocent people who survive.
Just because they have Down syndrome. Some of the happiest people you'll meet.
Yeah. So
He and my sister Laura, she has Down syndrome and cerebral palsy. She's in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. She can't walk. And she crawls from place to place. She is the sweetest person I know, and we adopted him because we have such an amazing life with Laura. And so, I mean, there's only 7% of these people who survive.
I'm glad to have one in my life because my brother's disabled.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And this culture, this culture murders people like that all the time.
He
Like
literally
Terry
almost died-
Schiavo.
He died on us twice and had to be flown all the way to Denver
My
just to
sister
be saved
did
his
too.
life.
She died right when she was born. And
That's how my brother was.
Yep, and they brought her back to, God brought her back to life right before my mom and dad's eyes.
And like Terry Schiavo, I don't know if you know about
Really fucked a bitch.
Terry Schiavo.
She didn't care.
She was murdered in 2005 in the state of Florida. She was a regular, person like you and me. And do you recall her condition? She was like on a feeding tube. Terry Schiavo.
She was on a feeding tube. She was dependent upon her family, her husband, to keep her alive. My daughter has a feeding tube, so she needs to. Not this daughter, but our oldest.
I remember when my brother had one. He has a big old scar because he couldn't eat on his own still camp.
He shouldn't be alive. I mean, we should be able to just pull that thing out because he can't live on his own.
No.
According to the reasoning that we've heard today, is that if you're dependent upon somebody else for your survival, you don't need to live.
Yeah.
So some people would say, take out the feeding tube, starve them to death.
And that's what they did.
Yeah.
A judge, with the husband's consent, because he had already found another woman and had moved on from her emotionally. She had already died, though she was living, and he saw her as a hindrance. He didn't want to spend the rest of his life taking care of her. Okay, so he had a motive, an evil motive already, and a judge sided with him to be a precedent-setting thing, and the judge got a medical professional to go in there and physically remove that thing from her. She doesn't know what they're doing. They take the feeding tube, and she sits there for weeks dehydrating and starving.
That's just fucked.
And there were people who were arrested trying to bring her food and water. Are actually arrested trying to care for her.
They went to jail.
That's
trying to actually. They're not saying why should we care about one human being. We're like saying we're all brothers and sisters. We're made in the image of God. We're valuable based on whose image we're made in. Not because what she could be or what she should have been or who she's not. We're in a principled world. We should be defending those who can't defend themselves. And what more least defenseless person is that one? Or these that are on our signs? So we're trying to identify with the people who don't have a voice, who can't defend themselves, who can't speak for themselves. And we're just trying to take what we've learned as Christians and boil it down into something that we believe is the most meaningful action that we could do. Applying our Christianity in the area of child sacrifice. This is child sacrifice. It's the age-old practice of kill your child so that you can receive all the blessings this life has to offer. And you can have more children later if you want.
And this culture, here in Colorado, Denver the same. You saw how many students here support doing this to children. They'll look at this. They'll look at this image and say that's okay to do to a child.
Even though we disagree on things.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for being respectful. Thank you for not killing me and listening, and thanks just for engaging. That's all. And did you get a piece of literature if you wanted one? We have tons.
No,
I didn't want to deprive you from it.
Well, you can have 6 if you don't rip it up.
She
Want to read it?
would.
Her friend wants to do water in my face.
Yeah.
Water bottle.
I got spit on several times. I got loogies on me. I got hit by a water bottle.
So
That's how these kids act.
okay, so you've seen
It's because they're public schooled, and this is why parents shouldn't send their kids to public school.
Exhibit A.
I know. I'd rather be homeschooled than Come here.
You can.
I can see why. I can see why.
I'm